Kathy Tidaldi, and I work here at the Livingston Parish Library. I'm at the Denham Springs Branch, and I wanted to, we're going to finish our painting that we started last week. This is our snowy cardinal painting that we've been working on. This is a finished product, and I'm going to show you, we got about halfway done with it last week, and this time we're going to finish it up, and we're going to have a lot of fun doing the detail work and putting the snow in and all the fun things. We got it roughed in. This is how far we got last week, and we're going to put him in the background in a minute, and we're going to start painting again. This is where we got to, and I'm going to show you the paints that you can put on your palette to get started and get ready to go. All right, I'm so glad you came back, and if you went ahead and started painting in some of your greenery, that was great. I'm going to show you what's on my palette today. I like my cool colors over on the left-hand side, and then the warms up here. I usually leave this open so my arm doesn't wipe into things, because I have a tendency to do that. But I started with a little bit of black. We're going to use black on his face. Blue, green, I have got two greens. I wanted to put a dark green out for the leaves. You'll see in a minute. Yellow, two reds for the cardinal. We've got a light red and a dark red. This is yellow ochre, burnt sienna, and raw umber. So we may or may not use all of these, and most of these you could mix. If you have your green and yellow and red, you can make almost anything. So what we're going to start with, we're going to pick up where we left off. I'm using a really tiny pointy brush, and put my water where I can get to it. And we're going to keep putting the greenery on the leaves. If you see back there, mainly on the smaller branches, we're just painting in, and we're going to use the darker green mixed a little bit with the lighter green. You don't want to use a really light green here, because that would indicate spring. In the springtime, when the needles first come out, they're real light green. So we want to find a nice, and we might even put a little burnt sienna, yellow ochre in there to indicate. Let me grab a little bit of that and mix that with the green. Because these are pine needles at the end of the season, not the beginning. So we're going to, when you're drawing your pine needles, what you want to do is you start at the branch and you kind of whisk out. You want them to remain narrow, not big broad brush strokes. You want little tiny brush strokes, and they're all coming out from the branch. So, and they can come out at all different angles. But the way you make them pointed on the end is to make sure that you start your brush stroke at the branch and then move outward, see? We're going to pretend this branch here started a little earlier, and so the brush stroke starts at the branch and then goes away from it, and that way you lift your brush off right when you get to the end, and make sure you're using a really tiny pointed brush to do this. It's okay if you mix your greens, have a couple shades of green in there. In fact, I'm going to go with an even pointier brush. I have a littler one here that I can use. Use the littlest one you have for these tiny little needles. Just every which way. I'm going to put a little more yellow in mine. And we're going to go back and cover them up with snow, so it doesn't matter if they're not absolutely perfect. They're just kind of random. Different shades of green, different lengths, slightly. You want them all to be about a ½ inch to an inch long. And you might even have a few coming off the main branch here, but not too many. Most of the needles are on the ends. And we're going to count on those drying while we work on the other details, because we're going to come back with the snow near the end. The snow is one of the last things we're going to put on. Put a few more little leaves sticking out there. I think that one's got enough. And you can put a little more in the center, because you can pretend those branches are pointing right at you. All right, so that's that end. It's also helpful to remember when you're working on a painting, if possible, move from the left to the right. Like if I had painted these first, I might be putting my arm in them when I go back to paint these. You can't always depend on doing that, but sometimes it's helpful just to remember you want to work from left to right, if you're right-handed, so you're not always dragging your arm across wet paint. Some of these things I learned through experience. So you may have to find out what works for you. Like when I lay my palette out, like I said, leaving that space open. Sometimes I use that area to mix paint, and sometimes I'm just like happy to not be dragging my arm in it. Oh. And in nature, things are kind of random, so you want to make sure that this doesn't end up looking exactly like a bottle brush. You know, you want to put a few long ones and a few short ones and a few dark ones and a few light ones and just kind of mix them up there. Different directions. And at the end, you want them coming straight out as well as to the side. Oh, that one was kind of thick. That's okay, it's going to be covered in snow. All right, now we're a couple more branches to go. I made a few fewer branches than I did in the other painting because I thought that one was kind of busy. I thought that one was too much about the branches and less about the bird. So this one I just kind of made less branches. It's fun when you're painting, you can do that. You can alter nature. Whenever you're painting, you can change things around and add a little here, add a little there, decide if you want one bird, two birds, which direction you want them to be facing. You get to make all those kind of choices. I'm getting out here near the end of this one. Almost done with the leaves, with the needles, I should say. All right, got a little bit of dark green here. I'm going to put some needles over here in dark green. Even though they're going to be covered, it's kind of nice to have a variety of shades in there. So, like I said, you have a little bit of randomness. Doesn't hurt to put some going off in a different direction once in a while. Let's see, we got some over here. We're gonna I hate to rush this part because this is the fun part. You know, you do the blocking in and you get everything set so you can go back and play with your detail work. To me, that's fun. And all I'm doing over here off screen on the palette is I'm just mixing different shades of green. I've got my two greens, I've got the yellow, I've got the yellow ochre, and I just kind of dip from one into the other just for variety. See, the darker green is kind of got a little blue hue to it. It looks like a spruce tree would look. And then when I put the yellow ochre in it, it comes out looking a little bit brown, see? If you really were trying to darken it, I'm going to tell you, I'll probably mention this in every episode. If you want to darken a color, I never use black to darken. Black saps the color out of things. It just, I'd say it makes it dead. You don't want to use black as a shading. We're going to use black on its face because its face is almost completely black. And I've seen a lot of painters that can go in with other colors to imply black, and mostly that's what I do. But in this painting, we're going to use black on his face. But usually, I don't use much black. I use other things. And when I want to darken a color, I use the complementary colors, the opposite color on the color wheel. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to make a color wheel. One of the painting episodes coming up, I'm going to show you how to make a color wheel that you can refer to. Whenever I talk about complementary colors, you'll know what I mean. So if you're painting on green and you want to make it darker, let me show you what happens if you put a little red into that green. I'm just mixing that dark red with the green. I don't know if you can see this, but it makes it really dark. See? It darkens it in. If I wanted to make a shadow right there, I could even put a little blue in with the red. Almost has a nice brown effect to it, but you can get a nice dark shadow without ever touching black. All right, now we just finished putting in the greenery, and we're going to leave that set and let it dry for a little while, because the next thing before we're done, we're going to add snow to it. We're going to cover all of it in snow, and that's really going to make it look three-dimensional and cold. So one thing I do want to work on, I want to work on this branch a little bit. I should have done that before I put the needles on, but it doesn't need much. I don't like the fact that the tail shows through, and so we're going to go back with our browns. And if I wasn't going to put snow on it, I would be more concerned about it, but you don't see too much of that branch. I mixed my two browns together and got a kind of a reddish brown. Now for the darker, on the underside you want to use dark. Let me show you what I mean. If I would put just the raw umber on the underside of the branch. Because that's where the shadow would fall. So the dark side would be the bottom. And then you would use the lighter brown, kind of like a highlight on the center of the branch. Oop, that's a little too light. I just mixed a little burnt sienna with the raw umber for the center of the branch. We just don't want it to look too wispy. You know, whenever you can see the blue through it, it looks airy. We want it to have a little more substance than that. So we're going to go back. And once again, in this case, the snow is going to be piled on top of it, but I don't want his tail showing through right there. So I wanted to make sure I came back and got a lot of coverage where his tail is. That red color, sometimes you have trouble. Now, it's the cheaper the paint, I mean, this is a rule of thumb, the cheaper the paint, the less pigment is in it, the less coverage that you have. So these are not expensive paints, I'll grant you that, but these are paints that I would paint with anytime, anywhere. So they're not the most expensive, but they're not the least expensive. But you can get away with using cheap paint as long as you realize you may have to go back and touch things up to get the right amount of coverage. Like the little paints in the bottles I was telling you last time, you can paint with those in a pinch. I've taught entire classes where that's all we used, and they have great vibrant colors and they dry fast. They're a little thinner, and you do have to be careful, like I said, with coverage. All right, so I think that's enough on the branch. Now we're going to work, oh, now, I like to have 2 cups of water. If I didn't mention, I did mention it last time. 1 cup is to put my brushes in, and the other cup is to use whenever I'm doing the painting, because the cup with the brushes is going to get kind of muddy, and you don't necessarily want the paint that you're using to mix, that water, you don't want that to be muddy. So, we're going to leave our tree branch alone. I'm happy with that. And we're going to get a little red here and start working on the highlights. Now, I'm using one of my rounds. I call this brush a round. It looks pointy, and then whenever you knock the soap out of it, when I wash my brushes, now would be a good time, I leave a little bit of soap in, and I bring it to a point afterwards. Let me find one. Here, see, this is a flat brush I used last week, and it's nice and stiff, just like it came out the package. And that's just because I left a little soap in, shaped it, and let it dry that way. And when you're ready to paint with it, that soap is not going to hurt anything at all, and you've got your brush that's nice and well shaped. So, take my round that I was using last time, and I'm going to dip it in some water, and let's just start with the bright red, the yellowish red. I would call that cadmium red. A lot of the paint kits are going to have a different name for it because cadmium is a kind of expensive pigment, and they say it's light cadmium, but they may call it other things, but bright red, what have you. As long as you got a nice red, it actually has a little yellow in it. It has a little bit of orange color to it, and we're gonna go over our bird. Oh, see, there you have it, a little green there. Make sure if you put your hand in paint, don't put it on your sky. Make sure you wipe it off before you keep painting, or else you're gonna have green spots in your sky. All right, I want to work on his crest a little bit and have it going in the right direction here. I'm gonna add a little bit of the dark red, and what I used to shadow my red was I put a little bit of my ultramarine blue into the red. I mixed it up together, and it made a nice dark shadowing for me to put under and around his wings. We're going to go back around his wing here and blend it in. And down at the bottom too. Kind of feather it up because that's what he has is feathers. It's okay if it looks like feathers whenever you're painting it in. It might be a little brightness on the end here. He has a layer of bright red in between the two dark areas. I noticed when I was painting from the picture I was working on, he had some bright feathers in the middle there. He had dark at the top and dark at the bottom. So we're going to put a layer of bright red feathers right across the midsection of his wing. Let me put some more shading in up here. Take a line of that and go right around. We're going to kind of define his wing area with that darker reddish, with the blue mixed in with the red. We get a nice dark shadow. If you're not careful, it'll go too dark. And then underneath his wing is also that same dark shade. Now I'm going to change brushes and use the lighter red. There's a good one. Oh, we'll use one of the new brushes. Yay! Now this is the cadmium red. I think I want to add a little bit of white to it. I want it real light for the highlights on his chest there, see? Maybe put a little bit in here too. And his crest. Right around his little cheek there. And it's okay if the brush strokes show because it looks like feathers. You want it to look like there's a little bit of a painterliness going on there. Little feathers, little brush strokes. Okay, I'm about happy with my bird. I want to work on his legs. Let's do his legs. I like to wipe the brush off my paintbrush before I put it in the water so it doesn't completely muddy up the water. We're going to work on his face. We're going to do the details around his face in a minute. It's going to be a lot of fun because we're going to redo his beak a little bit more and we're going to paint his little face in and his eye. You're going to have fun with that. But for now, let's pick out a little tiny brush and do his legs again. We just kind of implied his legs, and they're really small. They're really skinny, but we want them a little darker than that. So I'm going to go with this, not as dark as the branch. We don't want them to look like they're part of the branch. I'm going to mix my burnt sienna with my yellow ochre and redo his legs just a little. We're just going to give them a little more definition. Make sure that the sky doesn't show through them. Now we're going to take a little more of the yellow ochre and paint his little toes as they're going around the branch there. 3 little toes going around the branch. Now we'll go with a little bit lighter shade, because what we're going to do is we're going to highlight. We're going to make some little highlights on the top. Think of chicken legs. You know, they have a little scaliness, a little roughness on the actual legs themselves. We don't want it too light, but we want it to stand out from the branch so it doesn't look like it's just part of the branch. We can imply. We don't have to get real detailed, as long as you can see that there's those little toes are holding onto the branch for him right there. He's got one behind it. All right, I'm about happy with his legs. You can play around with it if you want to. Let me darken in a little bit right here. All right, I think I like that. We're going to leave that alone now. And okay, I think it's time to move in a little closer and work on the detail work around his face. Okay, now we're going to do the fun part. Now we're going to start in the details of his face to make him really look like a cardinal. And like I said, this is one time where I'm going to go ahead and use black, because his face is very black. And what you want to do is use a little water to thin the black out a little bit, and use a nice fine pointy brush. And I'm going to go off of the other picture. I'm looking at it, but it's okay if you just look at what I'm doing. I'm going to get up close to his little cardinal beak and go around it. I'm going to outline it first. I learned a long time ago when I was coloring, if you outline first, then it makes it easier to not color outside the lines. So then he's got a cheek that comes in here, and then he comes down like this with his throat is black. And then up here, we're going to do his eyes separate, but we're going to paint all the black in. He's got like a little black mask on. Looks almost like a raccoon mask. Okay. Alright, we're going to go a little further back with it. And I tell you what else we're going to do. We're going to make some little feathered brush strokes out, because it is feathers and they do come out away from the rest of him a little bit. This has a little point to it. And this part, it's okay if it's not perfect, because guess what? Out of all the pictures I looked at, they vary from bird to bird. But that's the kind of mask we're going to put on our bird. Come down a little bit more in front. All right, okay. Now, I'm going to let that dry a little bit, because when we put his eyeball, his eye is right back here at the back of his mask. We want to paint a little circle of red back there and make his eye. So that's basically it for the black part, except the eye. But I want to work on his beak now. I'm gonna make his beak put a little more paint on his beak, and then put some highlights in. Let's use another pointy brush so we don't mix black in with that. Now for his beak, I used the bright red, and I mixed a little yellow in with it, because he's kind of orange, and yellow and red make orange. So it's not completely red. Like if you were doing a female, if you've ever looked at the female cardinals, their beak is so orange. All right, so we're gonna put a little more paint on the beak, because it looks a little bit see-through right now. I know we covered over that line, but we're going to paint it back in. Let me get my little tiny brush again. All right, we're working on the beak. And like I said, it's kind of orangey. I just want to put a little bit of highlight on it because it's a little rounded. It's a little shiny, but not real glossy. And it's a little rounded, so we're just going to put a little highlighting down the top of it to show that it's kind of coming towards you a little bit more. Right in the front. Might be a little too much. You know, and it's funny, sometimes when you think it's too much and you back off, it's just right. So sometimes you need to back away from your picture, walk away, come back to it and say, oh, you know, that could have stood to be a little bit more of a highlight there. So I'm going to draw the line in between his two beaks. We're going to darken that line again because I just painted right over it. And that kind of defines his little mouth. It's not real dark. It's about the same shade that I used for his feathers right in here, which was the red mixed with a little bit of blue. We just want to imply, maybe a little darker, maybe a little more of a straight line right there. You don't want to fuss and worry over things too much because you can always come back in, like I said, get it the way you like it. Step back away and see. There we go. He looks almost like he's smiling. That's the idea. All right, now let's go for the eye. For the eye, I don't want to use pure red. I'm just going to make a little round circle, and I'm going to thin it down and use the tiniest brush I have. Let's see which one. I think I've got that in my hand. I'm going to use a little burnt sienna, and it's not going to stand out very much. It's going to be a circle, just a little tiny circle right up here at the back, near the back of his little mask, and it comes up to his, it almost blends in with the red feathers, so we're just going to draw a little circle right here, as round as you can get it. Ta-da! Like that. Now, I'm going to use the black to straighten that up a little bit. Fill in the top so that it looks like a circle. Because the rim around his eye is almost non-existent. It's just almost implied. It just highlights, it defines the eye though, so that's why you want it to be as close to a true circle as you can get it. Not too big, not too bright. But if there's a focal point, the focal point is going to be his little shiny eye. And I'm going to show you what we do to make it come alive. Almost the very last thing we do is we're going to put a little white dot right in the middle of his eyeball. Now you see where the circle goes up above his mask? I'm going to make that a different color. I'm going to make that a slightly darker red, because right now it just kind of disappears. I'm going to continue that little circle we made right above his eye. Darker still. Didn't make it dark enough. All right. Get a little light red and straighten up my line a little bit right there. See, as much attention as I'm giving it, you really don't want it to stand out. You want it to just kind of hide. If you were looking at an actual picture, you would almost not see that circle, but it's very important because, like I said, this is going to be the focal point of your painting. So you want your circle just about as round as you can get it. All right. All right, I'm happy with that. I'm happy with his eye. I'm going to come back and put a little white dot right in the front of it, but I'm going to wait till the black dries a little bit first. So the next thing, we are ready. We are really ready to put the snow on the branches. We're getting there, folks. All right, for this, I want to use one of my filberts. Remember I told you the filbert is the round shape brush, but I don't want the biggest one. I want a little, I'm going to break into my new brushes here. Here's a filbert. It's rounded on the end and it's kind of tapered. So we're going to use that, and we're going to use pure white, just whitey white paint, and we're going to thin it down a little bit and just start dabbing it right. Our greenery is nice and dry now, and so we're going to start over to the left. Like I said, we're going to do it on the branches and on the, I'm gonna see if we can back out and look at the other painting for a minute so you can see what we're going for. All right, I just wanted to bring the other painting back into view here so you can see what the snow is going to look like. This is what we're going for, and all I've done is I've dabbed white over all the branches so that it looks like snow's been sitting and building up on the branches, and that little bird decided to take a rest there and land on the snowy branch. So that's what we're going for. I'm going to put it back up here. Okay, now that you've seen what the snow is going to look like, I want you to go ahead and just get your filbert is the brush that's rounded on the end. And the reason I like to use that is because the snow actually falls, it's going to be in clumps. You don't want your clumps to be concave, you want them to be convex. So using a nice round brush means you can just dot it right on the branch, and the snow is going to look like it's clumped up there, see? Slightly above and on the branch. And you can, like, once again, nature is random, so you can do little random. It didn't necessarily build up everywhere, so you can have clumps of it here and there and miss a spot and turn your brush a little bit here and there and just have fun with it. Go around and make sure that there's a little snow out to the ends there where it built up on the branches. I'm going to come right on down the branch with it. You don't want it to be too uniform looking. You know, you don't want it to look so much like your brush. You want it to look more like random snow. So, just dotting it along. You might need to add a little water if your paint's really thick. Like I said, if you work from left to right, you're less likely to drag your hand through wet paint. So that's why I'm coming along the tree branch. Now where he put his feet down, he knocked the snow off. So there's a little maybe in front of him, but not right under his feet. These are a little too uniform. Every time I look up there, I see brush strokes instead of snow. All right. Makes you wish it would snow down here once in a while, huh? Now I was going to tell you something. I'll go ahead and mention it now. There's two things to me that are harder than painting. Well, painting's not hard. I love it. I'll put it that way. It's not that it's so easy. It's just fun. But naming a painting and putting a price on a painting are two of the hardest things for me. It's like I know people, I have friends of mine that can come up with the cutest names for their paintings, you know. Oh, something about, you know, red and silk and feathers. And I just go with the obvious. This one, and I try not to be too mundane. This one I would call Snowy Cardinal. But you can do it, you can name it anything you want to. You can name it February in Flight or... But like I said, naming the painting and putting a price on it. And when it comes to the price, I had a very wise woman tell me years ago when she was teaching me how to paint, Norman Roy told me, what's it going to take it away from you? And since then I've met people that charge by the inch and by the square foot and all this sort of thing, but I usually think back to what Miss Roy said. What would it cost? What would they have to pay you to take it off your hands? What's it worth to you? So that's kind of how I price my paintings, if you're selling them. A lot of my paintings go as gifts, and that's always fun. All right, I still am bothered by this part over here. I was just going to town and it looks too uniform. All right, now while we've got all that white, I'm going to go back. Let's see, we're almost done here, gang. I want to show you how wonderful it looks when you put that one little dot of white on his eye. He looks fine right now, but let's make him come alive. We're just going to take one little spot of white. Make sure you don't touch the snow. Sometimes you want to rest your finger on the dry part of the canvas. And we're just going to put, you're imagining that the sun is shining from this way, so all of his reflections are over here, so that's where the highlight on his eye is going to be, up in the corner here towards the sun. There you go. There you go. Now he looks like he's a live bird. Got that little wet eye that's glimmering the sunlight on it. I think we're just about done. Now, the fun part, and after you're completely done with your painting, you're hesitant to go back and do anything else to it, but when I put the snowflakes in, I had so much fun, and it really gave it that winter dimensionality. It really made it look three-dimensional. So I am going to take another little pointed brush, dip it in white. Oh, that one's got pink on it. We don't want pink snowflakes. Make sure there's no more pink. We're going to dip it in white. You can add a lot of water. Now some of the snowflakes are really out of focus. If you look back at the way other people have treated snowflakes, some of them are little dots and some of them are big dots. Once again, you don't want them to look like a polka dotted dress so that everything is uniform. You want them to look kind of random. So once I get the paint thinned out with some water here, that's what I'm doing over here, is thinning the paint out. I am just going to go back and start putting dots here and there. And you want them to look kind of round. You don't need them to be, you don't want them to be too many different shapes. But you do want them to be a little bit random. Big ones, little ones. And then when you get down near your bird, like I said, it's awful hard to bring yourself to put dots right on top of your bird when you're happy with him, but that's what makes him look like he's been snowed upon. Or no, the snow is coming down in front of him. Now you might want to, well, I started to say you might want to stop and think about where you want the snowflakes on the bird, but it's probably easier if you don't stop and think about it too much. Just start making some little white dots of snow in front of the bird. And you can put as much or as little as you want. Like I said, don't get too regular with your snowflakes. You want them to be kind of random. I keep using that word for some reason today. All right, we're about halfway done with the snowflakes. Let's get a few more up here. It's real fun to do them. You just want to make sure you don't get too regular. If you're not careful, then they'll look too planned. You don't want them to look planned. You want them to look sprinkled on. Different sizes, a little big. Now you don't want to put snowflakes over your most detailed parts. You don't want to put a snowflake over his eye or someplace. Like I said, the eye is going to be the focal point. Just coincidentally on this particular painting, the eye is the part that draws your attention. That little black beady eye, he looks very interesting because of his eye. Boy, it's a regular snowstorm going on here. Almost done. You don't want your snowflakes to be too weird of a shape. It quits looking like a snowflake and it starts looking like a brush stroke. Almost done with the snowflakes here. Got a few at the bottom here to make it look real. Put a few of them in front of the greenery too. Remember, it's snowing in front of the branches as well. It's like it brings another dimension. There's snowflakes between you and your bird. I don't like that one. It's a little too funny shaped. I think it's enough. I'm going to stop now. Now when you're not sure, it's time to back away and do something else and then walk back in and look at your bird. I think I want, at this point, I want to put a little bit more highlight on his foot. Almost done. His legs are a little bit long because I put the tree branch too low, but that's okay. We'll live with that. I think he's done. I think he's done. Now let me tell you, the perfect thing to do whenever you think your painting is done, you're going to find a place to sign your name. Now you don't want to sign your name too big because that's not the focus of the painting. You just want to find a little place, kind of unobtrusive, to put your name in so everybody can, so you can claim your work. Everybody can see that you're proud of your work. And signing your painting is the last thing you do. That's when you're happy with it, when you're not going to go back in and do anything else, that's when you sign it. And then I want you to put it in a frame. If you look at this painting, it's pretty okay. But if you look at this one with the frame around it, that's ready to hang on the wall. Once you put your painting in a frame, everyone in your family is going to want it. Your kids, your grandkids, your adult, depending on how old you are, somebody is going to love, you're going to love it when you put it into a frame. So that's what I encourage you to do, is to take your painting and find a frame. Even if you have to go down to the thrift store, you're going to find a frame for it that you can put around it, and that really makes it pop. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope your painting comes out great. Please let me know if you have any questions. If you have any problems, you can contact me here at the library. I'd love to figure out a way where we can do some feedback and I can help you with any challenges that you have in your painting. Next week, I'd also like for you to post your finished paintings. If you can put them on Facebook or somehow get them to us, we'd like to see your paintings when you're done with them. I want to tell you what we're going to paint next month. Next month we've got Mardi Gras coming up, and I have some ideas. I thought that we could make a painting of a Mardi Gras mask. Now, this is someone else's that I just found a picture of, and I liked it, and then I found some Mardi Gras masks that I wanted to superimpose on it. Like I said, I take several drawings or photographs, several pictures, and I put them together to make, and this is the beginning of the painting we're going to work on next month. So join us next month, see what I end up doing with that one, and then you can also use your own detail, your own imagination to make your own Mardi Gras mask painting. But for now, here's our snowy cardinal, and I hope that you had fun, and I hope you paint some more on your own. Well, I hope you had fun, and I hope you'll join us next time. Remember to stay safe, and stay happy, and keep painting, and keep reading.